All right, greetings and felicitations, everyone. Good to see you here this morning. Before we get to the two witnesses, we have your own questions, ideas, conundrums, and dilemmas. So anything that you want to yak about, go for it right now, or forever hold your peace. Question. We have a question from the floor.
My daughter was talking to me about the monks.
The monks. Any particular monks?
No, she just said the monks. She's been online and she's gotten a lot of different stuff from them, and she was just wondering what's the difference between the monks' belief and
monks. Well,
I guess Tibetan ones
so not she's not talking about monastery monk.
No.
So the Tibetan monks. Oh, so Buddhists, in other words.
Yeah. Oh.
Ah, well, that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother ball of wax. Buddha was to Hinduism what Luther was to Romanism. That is, Siddhartha Gautama was his name. I believe there's two D's. Siddhartha Gautama. G-A-U, I think. Gautama. I think that's right. Siddhartha Gautama. He was a prince in India, of course. And his early life was much like any reformer's early life, Augustine or Luther. He was kind of an irreligious peasant, not peasant, it was rich, indulgent is what I meant to say, indulgent, indulged his senses, lived a very profligate life, as they say, and then had an awakening under a tree. The Great Awakening, where enlightenment, thank you, appeared to him. And his awakening gave him insight into the problems of Hinduism. So Buddhism is an offshoot of Hinduism. Their basic tenets are somewhat the same, not exactly, but somewhat. In Hinduism, the goal of life for Hindus, their basic tenet is to achieve nirvana, which is basically to be absorbed into God, in their case, the great Brahma. Brahma is God. And so nirvana, when you achieve nirvana, you are then your consciousness, your personality, everything is absorbed into Brahma. You as an individual pretty much cease to exist. I mean, if you have consciousness, you're just conscious of being part of Brahma. That's basically it. You're conscious of being part of God. You have no real individuality, or you have no existence, really, individual existence. All right. So you basically cease to be yourself, and you become part of God. Okay. For Buddhism, it's the same thing. The goal is the same. All right. The difference is, in Hinduism, you do that basically through sacrifices and through living life to your particular God. There are lots and lots and lots of gods. In both Hinduism and Buddhism, there are tons and tons and tons of gods. Some experts have said there is no limit to the number of gods in Hinduism. Buddhism kind of sticks pretty much to the great Brahma. Buddha himself is not God. Now, he is assumed to have become absorbed into God. So basically it was a contest or a how did he say? Buddha, Siddhartha Gautama, said there's a better way. There's a better way to do this, to get there. Okay, and oh, by the way, this is done mostly, I say, through reincarnation. Oops. So if you don't get it right the first time, okay, when you die, you're not absorbed. You don't go to nirvana. You're not absorbed. Then you go around again. And if you don't do it right that time, you go around again. And if you don't do it right that time, you go around again. And you can come back as anything. You might not come back as a human being. Matter of fact, you probably won't come back as a human being. You could come back as an ant or a fly or whatever. Now, in Hinduism too, there is a hierarchy of reincarnation. In other words, usually reincarnation, you come back very often as something you hated. So if you hated cats in your human life, very likely Brahma would send you back as a cat the next time. And then as a cat, if you hated mice, you'd come back as a mouse. And if mouse, you hated fleas, you'd come back as a flea. And so on. So until you learn to quit hating. Okay? And there's kind of, like I said, there's kind of a hierarchy. It's not really a hierarchy of large animals as opposed to small animals, or good animals as opposed to bad animals. It really isn't that. Although the cow is considered to be top in Hinduism. That's why they don't eat cows. Or Buddhists don't eat cows too. But that's why they mostly don't eat cows. That's considered top of the line. That's even better than human. Okay, so if you've come back as a cow, that means you're right close to nirvana. You're right close to making it to being absorbed into Brahma. All right. And I can't tell you right now, wasn't prepared today for Hinduism, so I can't tell you right now what the rest of the hierarchy is. But I know that's at the top. Some Hindu scholars, if you want to call them that, would say humans are kind of at the bottom. That's kind of the worst thing you can be, because of course we do lots of bad things. When a tiger kills somebody, it's not considered that the tiger did something bad. Okay, because that's what tigers do. Tigers eat things, and you're a thing, and so tigers eat you. So it's not something bad. So it's not that the tiger will be punished necessarily. All right. But so anyway, now what Siddhartha did after his awakening or enlightenment, he came up with what he calls the Eightfold Path. And that is the difference, that is the main difference between Hinduism and Buddhism. Hinduism doesn't have a particular behavior, set of behavioral rules, whereas Buddhism does. Okay? And like I said, I'm not prepared, so I can't tell you off the top of my head what all 8 are. I do know that nonviolence is a big one. Don't hurt anything. Okay? I know that, be honest, don't lie, okay? Don't kill, okay? So much like the 10 Commandments, there's a couple of things that are in there that are a little odd to us as human beings. One part of the Eightfold Plan path is not to have a large bed. That was a real big deal with Buddha for some reason, not to have a large bed. It doesn't matter whether you're married or not. You should crowd yourself into the smallest bed you can possibly crowd yourself into. Big beds were seen as superfluous, luxurious, non-necessary, and whatever. And so it was kind of a sign. If you had a big bed, it was a sign that you were like Buddha used to be. You are a profligate, lazy bum, and you should cut that out. So no big beds. You know, if you want to make a living in India, don't open a bed store unless your beds are real small. Okay, don't open a bed store with the big beds that we have. You know, king size California kings, right? So that's one of them. But I can't tell you what the other ones are in particular, except, like I say, they're a lot like the Ten Commandments, okay? So you follow the Eightfold Path. One of the ways to follow the Eightfold Path, one of the best ways, he would say, is to separate yourself from the world. So be a monk, okay? Yeah. You go off to a monastery, you go off to a place and you separate yourself. And you live an austere life. Right. You don't eat fancy food. You don't eat luxurious things. You don't live luxuriously. Your clothes are very simple. You do lots of good deeds. You work hard for other people. You do a lot of charity, all that kind of stuff. Or you study. Or in Tibet, one of the things they do is they spend hours and hours and hours in prayer. And so one of the things that was developed out of Buddhism, more so than Hinduism, is what's called a prayer wheel. And a prayer wheel is a stick, okay, with a cylinder attached to it, okay? I'm not sure how it's attached, but it's attached. And then off one side is a chain with a weight, okay? And so you can move your hand just a little bit and the weight will cause the cylinder to spin, all right? And there's an outer shell that spins, and then there's an inner shell that stays stationary. Thank you. Stays stationary. So there's two, okay, and there's a hole in each one. So there's a hole in this one and a hole in this one. And what you do is you take a long strip of paper and you write a prayer on it. Okay? Then you roll it up real tight, okay, so that you can put it through both of the holes. You line them up and you put this through both of the holes. Right? Okay. Now, as you spin it, every time in a cycle that the holes line up, the prayer goes out. The whole thing. I mean, you can write a real long prayer. You know, you can write a half-hour prayer, you know, and roll it up, stick it in there, and then every time you spin, every time those two holes line up, then the prayer escapes. And it goes to Brahma. Okay? Okay? So you can repeat a prayer thousands and thousands and thousands of times, just sitting there for hours, you know. And when you're done with that prayer, okay, you line them up, you empty it out, write another one, roll that up, stick it in there, and then you start going again. Okay? And maybe while you're doing that, you can do a little meditation. Okay? So that's what some monks do. That's they spend their whole day just, you know. No, the paper doesn't fly out. The prayer flies out. Sorry. Just the prayer. The prayer flies out. Yes. Every time the holes line up, the prayer expresses itself to Brahma. Okay. And so that's what some monks spend most of their day doing. Okay. And studying the writings and sayings of Siddhartha Gautama. and he's called promptly the Buddha. I think that's right, but I always spell that wrong, always. Anyway, the Buddha. And Buddha means enlightened one.
Is Harvard the one who brought the whole concept of reincarnation?
No, no. The Hindus had reincarnation long before Buddha lived. So again, Hinduism is kind of how do you want to say disorganized. I mean, there's millions of gods, literally, and you can serve anyone you want to. And if that's great for you, that's great for you. And nobody really cares. If you're a big follower of Vishnu, good. If you're a big follower of Shiva, good. And the followers of Shiva and the followers of Vishnu, they're not going to fight each other for superiority. All right. I'm trying to think of this one god. What the heck? I can't think of the name. Anyway, do you know the word thug?
Yeah.
Thug. The word thug, we pronounce it thug. The Indians pronounce it tug. Okay, they don't pronounce the H. Okay, but a tug was a follower of the goddess of death. I can't think of her name right off the top of my head. No, it'll come to me. But anyway, the goddess of death. And the Tuggees, they were called Tuggees, their devotion to this goddess was expressed not so much in going to a temple and sacrificing as it was going out and finding people and strangling them. Or the other way they like to kill people is with a pick. And a pick in the head, you know, a pick like you pick rocks, okay? A pick in the head or a strangle thing, you know, cord. That was their modes of, and they were very, very active at various times in Indian history. One of the last times they were active was when the British were in control. And the Tuggees came out in hundreds of thousands and murdered countless Indians and British citizens. It was, Kali, thank you, Kali, that's right, Kali. And the sect of Kali was really hard to put down, really hard. The British really had to fight a lot to put that sect down. Since then, I don't think it's really risen up much. That was in the 1850s, maybe, 1870s, that Kali last really expressed itself. You see that if you remember Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. Those were devotees of Kali for the most part. Those were Tuggees for the most part. So anyway, but yeah, Hinduism is like I say, disorganized. It do whatever you want. And it can be very, very violent, like I say, with the Tuggees. And it can be very, very gross and disgusting. And also from Hinduism, you get the idea of the caste system. And the caste system, is related to reincarnation. If you come back as a certain class of human, so not only are the animals rated as far as what you want to come back as, good, bad, or indifferent, but human beings are also related. If you come back as a prince, obviously Brahma's pretty happy with you, and you're okay. Okay. If you come back as a colored Indian, and you may or may not have noticed this, but if you go to India, you see it. I'm told, I've never been, but I'm told you go to see it. There are as many variations of skin tones among Indians as there are American Indians or African Americans or Africans in general. If you go to Africa, you can find people who've never been anywhere else. They've lived in Africa for generations, thousands of years, and some are, black as the ace of spades, as we used to say, and some are relatively light colored. Okay, that's true all through Africa. That's true also in India. Now, in India, same as everywhere else pretty much in the world, unless everybody in your area is all one color, which, like if you're a Indian down in a native down in Brazil, and all you know is the people around you, well, you don't have any problem with that. But in places like India and Africa and America and whatever, there's always, the darker you are, the worse you are. Darkness and light have always, no matter what religion you talk about, I mean, and these are cultures and religions that have no contact with each other at all. None. Zero. Okay? But still, the darker you are, the worse you are. The lighter you are, the better you are. That is true from the North Pole to the South Pole. And from, Tahiti to, China, whatever. It's the same everywhere. If you're in China and you're a dark Chinese, you are worse than a light Chinese. Okay? American Indians, same way. American Indians could tell right away. Let's say the Choctaw or the Cherokee were lighter, or a little bit lighter than the Sioux, or whatever, and one considered the other one lower on the totem pole, so to speak. Right? So the caste system, okay, if you were sent back by Brahma and you came out black as the ace of spades, okay, you were probably born from two black people, probably, 99% chance, okay? You were born into the lowest caste. These are called the untouchables. Has nothing to do with Eliot Ness. But they're untouchable because you literally, the rules were, you can't touch these people. And they did all the jobs that had to do with garbage and excrement and anything like that. You may or may not know that in the ancient world, you know what was used as detergent? Anybody? Anybody? Detergent? Like to wash clothes? Urine. Urine was used to, urine, you may know, if you're a nurse, you know, it's sterile. Okay? So it's sterile, but because of its content, acid content, whatever, I don't know. But anyway, because of its content, it was really did good. Phosphorus, I guess, maybe, huh? Anyway, it did a good job taking out stains and, on washing clothes. Of course, rinse it real good, of course. But so the untouchables, one of their jobs, besides picking up cow poop on the roads, that was a big job for them, all right? The other big job was to collect urine, okay, for laundries, okay? That was one of their big jobs, all right? So anything having to do with the more nasty things of life, you might say, okay? Running the garbage dump, picking up the garbage, sweeping the streets, that kind of stuff, that's done by the untouchables. That's done by the lowest caste. And still in India today, even though they've passed laws like we have, about segregation and all that, they've passed a lot of laws, doesn't do any good. In a lot of places in India that's really steeped in Hinduism, the caste system is definitely in place. And you do not mess around. Now, I don't know, to tell you the truth right now, again, off the top of my head, how many castes there are. I know there's more than one. I think there's, I'm going to say 7 or 8, maybe 10. But and you do not cross. You do not. That's a no-no. Okay? If you're caste number 4, you don't marry somebody from caste number 8, and vice versa. Okay? And it all has to do with the color of your skin. Okay? Gandhi tried, yes. Gandhi, of course, was very dark. He was very dark. I don't know if he was an untouchable or not. He may have been, but he was very dark, and he tried to break the Hindus out of the caste system, and boy, they fought him. They fought him, and they did not like that idea at all. Because their whole society for thousands of years, we're talking thousands, maybe even more than that, but we're talking thousands of years, 6, 7, 8, 10,000 years, has been built on this caste system. Okay? So you don't want to mess with that. It's not like, blacks in America in slavery, 100 years, 150 years, 200 years, you're talking thousands of years. You're talking generations upon generations that, you're messing with here. And you just don't do that. And so, yeah, Gandhi, that's why he was assassinated by a Hindu. He was assassinated by a Hindu. And his daughter, Indira, was also assassinated by a Hindu. And the guy, what's his name? Nehru also. I don't know if he was assassinated or attacked. He may have been assassinated, but he too. The Hindus, I tell you, they don't fight about which goddess or god they're worshiping, but they do fight about anybody who wants to mess with their religion in general. Yeah. They hate Muslims. Oh, hate them big time. You can imagine Muslim, one God, Allah. Hindu, billions of gods. Big fight there, right? Okay. Usually Hindus and Buddhists don't fight that much, usually, but every once in a while they'll get into a tangle. And the Buddhists usually take it on the chin because they're pacifists. I was surprised to find Buddhists in the military. Relatively recent. You didn't have Buddhists in the United States military until, I think, after the Second World War. But they're mostly corpsmen. Don't carry weapons, things like that. And for that reason, there is maybe more now. But there was, at the time when I studied it, there was one Buddhist chaplain in the United States Army. I think there's probably more than one now, but there was one. I don't know. Does that answer your questions?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Going back to Europe,
Yes.
not mine. I was in Hawaii,
Uh-huh.
and I was there 7 months. I got to know a lot of locals, went up surfing and hung out at the beaches. One of the local guys came running in, and he's hopping on his foot, and he pulls his foot up. He says, "Pee on me."
Oh, yeah, sure.
You've heard
Yeah.
of that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Because that black
yeah.
line of that, whatever it is,
Fish, yeah.
sea creature,
Same with jellyfish.
if
Yeah,
it gets
the
into your blood,
Yeah.
or into
When I was a kid, growing up in San Diego, in La Jolla,
and I didn't know anything. I thought
Yeah.
this was a joke, and these guys are okay.
Yeah.
Peeing on his foot.
Yeah. This was very common when I was a kid. Yeah, with jellyfish and stuff, and and some poor little guy. I remember very distinctly this poor little girl. She brushed up against a jellyfish and she got stung like numerous times, and she ran up to took the whole family ran up to the lifeguard, and this poor girl was in excruciating pain, and he looked at the dad and he said, "Okay, Dad, take her out behind a bush in the park there, and pee on her thigh." And what? How do you care? No, really, and sure enough, but it was very common to see that being done in my day.
It's not unsanitary.
Right. No, it's not. It becomes such relatively quickly, but originally it's not. No, it's really just not. Okay, John 5. This comes up every once in a while. I'll do this really quick. John 5, 24 to 29. Read it to you real quick. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life. Please note that. Do not come into judgment, but has passed from death to life. Right? Then he said, truly, truly, I say to you, an hour is coming and now is. Notice that. He says, and now is. Right? When the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear, the Greek word here means to listen, okay? Those who hear will live, right? For just as the Father has life in himself, so he gave the Son also to have life in himself, and he gave him authority to execute judgment because he sent a man. Do not marvel at this. Then he repeats, for an hour is coming in which all who are in the tombs will hear his voice and will come forth to resurrection, and goes on. Okay, So some people get this confused, okay? And they think this means two resurrections. That there's a first resurrection. Sometimes some people will say, well, that's the rapture or whatever. Then there's a second resurrection. No. Okay? The first time he's talking about coming to life, he's talking about believing the gospel, becoming a believer, being saved. The second time is talking about the last judgment, when all those in the tomb will hear the voice of Jesus and come up, believer and unbeliever. And then that's why he says, those who has committed evil deeds, resurrection, and those who have not to judgment. So, not two resurrections. There are not two resurrections. There is coming from life to death, or from death to life as a believer. You go from eternal death to eternal life, or you go from kingdom of Satan to kingdom of God. And then there's the second judgment, the last judgment, the final judgment, the second coming, I meant to say, second coming, when people will be raised from the dead. Right? Okay, good. All right. We need to get going on Revelation, because we spent all last week talking about something else. So let's read about the two witnesses in chapter 11, please. We're going to read the first 6 verses. Chapter 11, verses 1 through 6. There was given me, that is John, a measuring rod like a staff, and someone said, get up and measure the temple of God and the altar and those who worship in it. Now, we've already seen there's this temple of God's been presented in the vision, all right, and all that. Leave out the court, which is outside the temple, and do not measure it. The court was the place where, as far as the Gentiles could go. So it was called the court of the Gentiles, okay? For it has been given to the nations, all right? And they will tread underfoot the holy city for 42 months. Now, here we have a number coming up, the 42 months, which is 3.5 years. And that's going to show up numerous times now, and we're going to talk about it in the notes. Don't be distracted, though. Don't be distracted by the numbers in Revelation. They are meaningful, yes. God used them for a reason, but don't get all balled up in them, and you forget about everything else, right? Be careful there. Anyway, so the nations in this case, nations goyim in Hebrew, which means apart from the children of Israel. And so in the usage here, we're contrasting the people in the temple from the Gentiles outside the temple. So we're talking about believers and unbelievers. So the unbelievers are the nations in this particular vision, in this particular symbolism, all right? So they will, the holy city, again, that's the church. We already found that out a couple of chapters ago. So the church, the visible church, not the Roman church, not the Eastern church, not the Lutheran church, not the Baptist church, but the church, that is the church of all believers, all right, will be trampled on by unbelievers. That means that the unbelievers will have the upper hand. Okay? And this has been true through most of history. The unbelievers mostly have the most of the power and very often persecute the believers. That's been the case. And I will grant authority to my 2 witnesses, and they will prophesy for 1,260 days clothed in shadow. That's the same as the 42 months, all right, 3.5 years. And they will prophesy in sackcloth. You've heard this before already. Humility. Prophesy does not mean tell the future. Prophesy means preach the gospel. So what's the period of time that the gospel will be preached? Specifically, when Jesus talks about when the gospel will be preached, what's that period of time? It is not the Great Tribulation. It is not the pre-tribulation. Okay? It is not after the rapture. All right? It's not the millennium. All right? The gospel will be preached from Pentecost to Judgment Day. Pentecost to Judgment Day. Is that 3.5 years? No. Is it 42 months? No. Is it 1,260 days? No. So the 3.5 years means something else, which we'll come to in a minute. Okay? But this is a period of time we're talking about, folks. We're not talking about some great tribulation period. We're not talking about 7 years. Okay? We're not talking about that. Not to say 7 years anywhere in there. So don't listen to these quackpots on the internet. Okay? There's tons of them. And they'll try and tell you that this is about, this is about the special dispensation of whatever. But leave it alone. All right. So God will, even though the church is being trampled on, okay, God will have his witnesses out there. Now, he talks about 2 witnesses, all right? 2 witnesses, and we've talked about them already. But these 2 witnesses, it can be a couple things. You can say law and gospel. It's okay. You can say grace and faith. Okay. You could talk about the 2 visible sacraments, baptism, Lord's Supper. All right. But in general, it is just a way of God saying there's more than one. Okay. There's more than one, and they're going to go out in the whole world and they're going to preach the gospel. All right. Clothed in sackcloth. And then he compares them something else. He had 2 olive trees and 2 lampstands that stand before the Lord. Now, olive trees, of course, give oil, which is absolutely necessary for life in the Middle East. And lampstands, of course, give light, which is, before electricity, pretty necessary for you to do anything in the dark. Okay? And if anyone wants to harm them, fire flows out of their mouths and devours their enemies. So if anyone wants to harm them, he must be killed in this way. Okay? What's the fire that comes out of their mouths? Well, again, you can say, well, it's the law, because the law slays people. Okay, I don't necessarily think that's a bad interpretation, but what really slays us is the gospel, because the gospel changes us from servants of Satan to servants of Christ. The gospel literally kills us and then resurrects us. But again, if you want to think of the law killing us and the gospel raising us, okay, that's okay too. That's all right too. But that's the fire that comes out of their mouth. These have the power to shut up the sky so that rain will not fall during the days of their prophesying. They have power over the waters to turn them into blood and to strike the earth with every plague as often as they desire. All right. So these people have tremendous power. They have the power of Elijah. Elijah could call drought down. Elijah could call plagues. Moses could do the same thing. Moses could turn water into blood, and so on and so forth. Okay. So these witnesses, they are very powerful. Okay. And God grants them a great deal of power and a great deal of authority, and they slay people. Okay, they slay them, as my old revival preacher used to say, "You're slain in the spirit." Hallelujah. Hey, praise the Lord. That's right. You're slain in the spirit. And people used to go shaking like this, and they just fall over. Oh, right? You ever seen that? Yeah. People, back they go. There was a guy named Reverend Ernest Angley. Have you ever heard about Reverend Ernest Angley? He was a hoot. He was out of, I believe, Cincinnati or Cleveland, someplace in Ohio. And he used to be on TV a lot. And he would have these big revivals, and people would come, and he'd invite them all up if they needed to be converted or whatever. They needed to be. Do you feel slain in the spirit? Come on forward right now, and be slain in the spirit. And he would walk up to them, and they'd all line up like this. He'd walk up to them, and he'd hit them like this, right in the head, boom, like that, and then back, and they go back, and he's just pow, 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 pow. You know, these people, and they'd be on the floor, and they'd be flopping around like a fish out of water. You know, and he'd say, "You are slain in the spirit." Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. One time in a pastor's conference, I stood up and I asked everybody, "Has anybody been slain in the spirit? Come on here, I'll slay you right now." Pastor behind me stood up and he said, "I move that Pastor Spencer not be allowed to speak at these conferences any further." I said, "Oh, come on, guys. Come on." I don't know. I don't know whatever happened to him.
Somebody explain him to me.
Ernest. He was a hoot, though. He was almost as bad. He was almost as entertaining as Reverend Ike. Reverend Ike was a Pentecostal charismatic preacher, black guy, huge man, 6 foot, whatever, 250 pounds, whatever, very wealthy. Had a diamond, not gold, a diamond in the middle of his front tooth. And he used to say, friends, it is not the love of money that is the root of all evil. It is the lack of money that is the root of all evil. And you would not want me to be evil, would you? So give me your money. And they would, man. He'd pass a hat and people, and then he'd get into his Rolls Royce and drive away, you know. He was a hoot. Reverend Ike. Yep. A lot of those guys. Boy, if they were alive today in the age of the internet, oh man, they'd give Joel Osteen a real run for his money. All right. So let's look at the notes now. Where did Tony disappear to? Okay. All right, fair enough. All right. In general, the book of Revelation provides the most in-depth explanation in the New Testament of the work of Satan in this world. The main thing that these revelations or these visions show is that while Satan does have great powers on earth, he is a defeated, created being. There is not some kind of dualistic battle occurring between Christ and Satan in which each party trades blows until one comes out the winner. This is what I have against the rapturists and the millennials and the dispensationalists, is they talk this way a lot. Well, Satan wins for a while, and then God wins for a while. Then Satan wins for a while. Then God wins for a while. And finally, God wins in the end. No, Satan's already defeated. He never wins. We never speak of Satan winning. We should never speak of Satan winning anything ever. Okay? That's not the biblical way of thinking. Okay? But it's very, very common among Christians, even good believers today. Very common thinking. And it's wrong thinking. We should not think of, well, okay, that person's an unbeliever. Well, Satan got that one. He won that one. No. He didn't win anything. Right? We should not think that way.
Sir?
Yeah.
Also, people always say, Satan made me do it.
Oh, yeah, right.
No, you really didn't.
That was in the 70s.
Yeah.
Get Wilson.
Devil made me do it. Yeah. Flip Wilson. Who the devil made me do it? Christ has already defeated Satan totally. That is the fact, folks. That's a historical fact on Good Friday. That's what makes Good Friday good. Hello? And Satan is completely under Christ's rule. Completely. Satan only does what Christ allows him to do. That's it. Period. Now, we may not agree. Okay, that's all right, that's fine. We don't agree with what Christ allows Satan to do sometimes. We object. Okay? That's because our faith is weak in that particular area, perhaps, or because we just don't understand or haven't given it some thought or whatever. Sometimes we just don't have the gift of being able to apply that in our problems. But that's a fact anyway. Whether we agree with it or not, it's a fact. All believers need to understand this and view all, please, circle, underline, whatever, all the events happening in the world, to them or otherwise, with this biblical perspective. This is the true believer way of dealing with the world. And it doesn't matter if you're talking cancer, doesn't matter if you're talking, drunk driver accident, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. War, nuclear holocaust, it doesn't matter. You've got to look at everything that happens in not just your existence, but the existence of everything around you. out as, to, Russia or whatever. You got to think of it in that way. That is proper biblical perspective. Anything less than that is not. And again, that doesn't mean that you rejoice about it. Doesn't mean that we celebrate, leveling of Kiev by Russian artillery. No, we don't celebrate it. But we see it in that perspective. This is still Christ's world, and he allows or causes, depending on what it is, things to happen. He is in complete, total, 1,000% control. Whether we see it or not, whether we agree with it or not, and whether we like it or not. That's the biblical perspective we have to always maintain. Okay, measuring of the temple. Let's talk about that for a little bit. Measuring of the temple reminds us of Ezekiel's measuring in chapter 40 of Ezekiel. However, the main point being emphasized here is that there is a holy Christian church. Christ knows it, and it is quantifiable. Christ knows those whom are his. I'm going to talk about this in the sermon today. He knows his sheep, and his sheep know him. Okay? So it is quantifiable. It has boundaries. You are either in the kingdom or you're outside the kingdom. There is no third possibility. You're either a believer on your way to heaven or you're an unbeliever on your way to hell. There is no third possibility. There is no third option. That's it. Two options in existence. No more. Okay? The church exists and is identifiable in the world by Christ. Christ knows his church. There is no physical temple that is being measured, but rather the entire church of Christ made up of all believers. These believers are the temple of God. Okay? This is what the Roman church gets wrong. The Roman church says there are no believers outside the Roman church. Okay? That's one of the principles. It's wrong. Okay? Sometimes the Lutherans sound that way. Sometimes it sounds as though we believe only Lutherans go to heaven. Okay? If you ever hear something like that, it's wrong. Okay? You probably don't hear it, but you think you hear it maybe sometimes. It's wrong. Okay? Just because we point out errors in other churches, we point out the errors of the Presbyterians, the errors of the Methodists, the errors of the United Church of Christ, the errors of the Roman Church, the errors in whatever, does not mean there are no believers in those churches. Unless, of course, they're like the Mormons, which they're not Trinitarians, and so there are no believers there, as far as we know. Number 3, the outer courts are reserved for the pagan nations. They do not have access to the actual sanctuary. Think of it this way. The entire temple complex, including the outer courts, corresponds to the visible church on earth, while the temple itself corresponds to the invisible church of all believers. Okay? Got that in your head? That picture in your head? So the temple compound is large. The temple itself is much, much smaller. So the temple compound, the whole thing, that's the visible church. That's all the denominations. Okay? And if the Mormons want to be included in that, fine. They can be included in that if you want to. They want to be part of the Christian church visibly. Nothing we can do to stop them. They can call themselves Christians all day long. Doesn't make them that, but they can call themselves that. All right? But the inner temple, that's the believers. And those are only people who are Trinitarians and accept certain things about Christ, virgin birth, resurrection, etc., etc. Okay? All right. A person is either in one or the other. There is no middle ground. Either one is inside the temple worshiping the true God, or one is outside. Either one believes or one does not believe, period. Having an inquiring mind is not good enough. Being a seeker is not good enough. This is why I, for one, do not change our worship services for seekers. It's a big deal in the Lutheran Church back in the 1990s, and still is in many places. The church service, the worship service, is constructed specifically for inquiring minds, for seekers. Okay? This is why, if you ever want to know, if you go to a Lutheran church, let's say you're born and raised in someplace in the Twin Cities, right? And so you're born and raised and you go to St. Smithers or whatever Lutheran church, all right? And then you graduate, you go to college, you graduate, you move out to California, Arizona, wherever, and you're away for your whole working life. And you retire, and you say, I want to retire back to the snowbanks of Minneapolis, because you're crazy, but okay. And so you go back to St. Smithers Church, and you walk into St. Smithers Church, and it's not St. Smithers Church anymore. It's the Church of Welcome Arms, or whatever. Okay, you see all kinds of names like this, okay? What was the name of that church where you were baptized?
Trinity.
It was Trinity, yeah, but
Right, but then it changed to the Common People Church.
Church of Common People or Church of
And then it had the gay flag out.
right, the gate, yeah, right, everything. So anyway, you walk in, and you know all the things that might be a little mysterious, like a liturgy. No, there's no liturgy. Okay, there's probably no pews. One church in outside of Madison, Wisconsin, did this. They became a what they called an awakening church and a welcoming church. Okay, and so one of the things it was a beautiful, beautiful building and a beautiful, beautiful altar and pews. It was just a gorgeous church. Well, they took all the pews out. They took all the altar furnishings out. Everything's gone. No pulpit, no lectern, no nothing. Took it all out. Okay, took the big cross. There was a big crucifix in the front. Took that out. Took everything out. Okay, brought in beanbag chairs and low little tables where you could sit down your coffee, whatever, and a raised platform just so that the guy could be seen when he's up there talking, from people in the back. All right, and had a big video screen where they played gospel tunes and with bouncing ball with the words, right? Yeah, Mitch Miller, there you go. And all the remaining members who had been there for generations, they've been there for many years. Anyway, they got outvoted, whatever, for this whole thing. There were, I don't know, couple dozen of them left. They immediately stopped going, of course. And the church eventually closed a couple years later. But anyway, this happens from time to time in our churches. Sometimes the parish service, consultants. If your church, if you go back to Wisconsin and your church ever talks about hiring the parish service consultants, run like a scalded rabbit. Because the parish services consultants will come in, and the very first thing they will do is they will say, get rid of your bylaws, get rid of your constitution, get rid of your church council, get rid of your elders, get rid of your deacons, whatever, get rid of all that, get rid of the voters, get rid of all that, and we're going to now run the church by consensus. Okay? And the next thing they're going to say is, we've got to get rid of the liturgy. We got to get rid of things like introits and graduals. We got to get rid of chanting. We got to get rid of all the stuff. Get rid of the pews, put in chairs. If not chairs, then lounges or whatever. One church, where was this? I think it was in Florida. They went out and got patio chairs. Those web patio chairs. They just set and they didn't put them in rows. They just put one here, one here, one here, one here, one here. They didn't like rows. Rows was too constricted. So that stuff starts happening again. Run. Get out of there. But yeah, seekers. Well, we want to be open to people who are inquiring, who are seeking. No. The church is here to serve you, the believers, the members. Yes, we do outreach. Yes, we want to reach out, absolutely. But the worship service is for you. The worship service is not for unbelievers, folks. Need to get that in your head. The worship service is not for the unbelievers. The unbelievers are going to come in and they're going to be confused no matter what. It doesn't matter if you use the word sanctus or holy. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you say a creed or not. They're going to say, what's going on? What is this? This is weird. Okay? They're going to come in, they're going to laugh. Oh, that preacher up there, look at him droning on about. Okay? That's what seekers do. That's what people who are not believers yet, that's the way they look at things. All right? And so you don't construct your service. You don't get rid of a hymn or the hymns because they're old German stuff or translated from Latin. You don't do that for them. Because your people need to sing. They need to sing Rock of Ages or whatever. They need to sing How Great Thou Art, whatever. They need to sing that. The visitor is not going to want to sing that. He ain't going to sing anyway. That's why another thing these churches do, they don't have hymns and they don't have the people sing. They have a group that sings or a group that plays rock and roll, and they sing and they entertain you. Okay? Because they're not looking to have worship for believers. They're having worship for unbelievers. They're trying to attract unbelievers. I'm not trying to attract unbelievers to our service. If they come, fine. But I took my oath of installation for you, to give you a worship service that you could use for worship. Not to be entertained, not as a stand-up comedy hour, okay, even though I throw a joke in once in a while. But no, for you to be able to worship, to receive from God, that's our worship. To receive from God His means of grace, the gospel, the word, and sacrament. Okay? All right.
Thank you.
Didn't that whole thing start with Willow Creek?
Yeah, Willow Creek and there was and Saddleback with Rick Warren. Yeah, in the 90s. Yeah, even in the late 80s. Yeah, that was.
I remember it coming into the Alliance Church.
Yeah,
There,
yeah.
I was trying to tell.
And that's why if you Willow Creek still pulls in 100,000 people a week for worship. They have Saturday and Sunday. 100,000. But this is why if you would ever go, for example, just you can take a tour, right? You can take a bus from Chicago and go down there. You won't see a cross. You will not see a cross anywhere in the building, anywhere. Not just maybe a little one over here. No, but you won't see a cross anywhere in Willow Creek Church. Okay. You don't notice. I don't know if I've seen them or not. I don't think so. You'll notice the cross in a lot of these TV guys. Some yes, some no. But again, anything that might offend the seeker, if it might, maybe even a little bit offend the seeker, well, we get rid of it. Okay, we get rid of it because we don't want the seeker to come in, take a look around, and go, oh, I don't want to be here. We don't want the seeker to come in and open up the worship folder and go, what in the world is this? We don't want that. We want the seeker to come in, hand him a cup of Starbucks coffee, give him a Krispy Kreme, smile, okay? Send his children somewhere else so he doesn't have to listen to kids bawling and whining and crying and whatever. Send them to somebody else, to children's church, okay? Send them, okay? Give him a nice chair, okay? And he can rock back in. Got a cup holder, okay? Okay? They come out, do a little skit, have a band, very good band, right? It's a light show, okay? Then have the preacher come out and preach for 45 minutes, but it's not really a sermon. It's just kind of like how to have a better marriage, how to have better friends, how to have a better portfolio, how to be healthier, whatever. And it may how to be good, how to be charitable, how to be kind. All that good kind of stuff, and how you're fine the way you are. We like you just like Mr. Rogers, right? Like you just the way you are. Okay. Maybe you could use a little rounding off rough edges. That's all. Okay. And we have lots of groups for you to join where you could do all these things. Come on in. You can join a group to do this. We got a couples club, and we've got teen club, and we've got pre-teen club, and post-teen club, and college club, and post-college club, and young married club, and old married club, and this club, and that club, and all the other clubs that you can possibly shake your foot at. Okay? Anyway, so seekers. That's what's been going on and still is continuing today. Anyway, so point number 3, page 70. Again, having inquiring mind is not good enough. Point 4. Now we get to numbers again. Again, don't let numbers take over. All right? Yes, they are important. Otherwise, God wouldn't have said them. But they're important to make a limited point. They're not. Don't let them take over your entire interpretation. Okay. Number 4. So now we get numbers. This time the numbers are 42 and 1,260 days. This is also 3.5 years. And although this particular wording is not used in Revelation, the next chapter will refer to time, times, and half a time. So time is 1. Times is 2. Okay? And half a time is half time. So 1 plus 2 is 3, plus half a time is 3.5. Okay? Which is the same period. So 3.5 is a common usage in prophecy. Right? In Revelation, all 3 numbers refer to the same thing. So very often, interpretation of prophecy, interpretation of Revelation, you will get people saying, well, the 3.5 years means this, and the 1,260 days means this, and the 42 months means this. No, they all mean the same. There's different ways of saying the exact same thing. So, hey, God is, He's giving you variables. He's giving you, He's giving you variety. Variety is the spice of life, right? Yeah, okay. All right. They are not surprised to learn that these numbers represent the entire New Testament period from Pentecost to Judgment Day. Guess what? Same thing. Shocking, aren't we shocked? We're shocked. How many times have we heard this since we started studying Revelation? 1,000? Well, probably not 1,000. 100. Probably, in the 34 months, whatever we've been studying, okay? This period of time, the New Testament period of time, is always the same. Pentecost to Judgment Day. Now, if you want to go back to Good Friday, be my guest. It's not that big a deal. But Pentecost is kind of a nice way to look at it because, church kind of blossoms after that. So we got Pentecost to Judgment Day. That's it. Again, no pre-time, post-time, forget it. No 1,000 years thrown in there, none of that, okay? That's it, bingo, the entire thing, right there. From the context of both the book of Revelation and the rest of Holy Scripture, we know these facts about this period of time is symbolized here in chapter 11. The first fact, the court of the temple is given over to unbelievers, during which they will be permitted to occupy the holy city like an enemy army. Okay, so the unbelievers will actually look like they take over the visible church. Okay, that's what it will look like to us. It will look like most of the people in the visible Christian church are not Christians, okay, or at least don't follow Scripture. It will look that way. We therefore should not be surprised, because God told us this. This is what will happen. Okay, they will call themselves Christians. Remember what Jesus said to those people? Oh, yeah, we prophesied in your name, and we did this and we did that, and Jesus said, "Get away! I never knew you." Why? Because they're unbelievers. Okay? They did not accept His word. Okay? They did not accept the Trinity. They did not accept the 2 natures of Christ. They did not accept the virgin birth, the resurrection, etc., and all the other things the Bible talks about. They called God a liar when God said, "Do not murder." Okay? They called God a liar. Okay? They said when God says, do not kill that that unborn child. Okay? And, well, that's not what God meant. That's calling God a liar. And anybody who calls God a liar is an unbeliever. That's pretty simple. That's pretty cut and dried, folks. There's no two ways about it. All right? So we've got all these churches that support that, support the gay agenda, support the trans agenda, support a lot of churches everywhere. Probably the majority of visible Christians. All right? God is saying right here, don't be shocked about this. This is what's going to happen. Okay? Next thing, unbelievers will not be forcibly separated out of the visible church. So you will have these people who are just bald-faced heretics. Okay? The ELCA seminary, okay, preaches that the Trinity is made up. It's a fiction. It's a myth. It's been made up by Christians. Okay? And nobody's taking their certification as Christian away from them. They should, but nobody is. Okay? So they will exist. Okay, the Roman Church. Okay, the Roman Church, elevating Jesus' mother to co-redemptrix. They're not going to be called out on that. Okay, well, maybe some Protestants will, but very few. No, nothing's going to be done. They're not going to be. The United Nations is not going to meet and pass a resolution that the Romans can't call themselves Christians anymore. Okay, that's not going to happen. All right. Okay. Look at the Mormons. The Mormons don't even believe Jesus is God, and they call themselves Christians all day long. And again, nobody's going to pass a rule in Congress saying they can't call themselves Christians. No, that's not going to happen. Okay. So first of all, okay, these unbelievers are going to look like they take over the church, the visible church. Okay? And they will not be thrown out by the believers that are there, or anybody else for that matter. Next, only at the last day will the sheep be separated from the goats, the grain from the chaff, the good fish from the bad fish. This is why Jesus told that parable of the weeds. When that guy said, let me go in and get the weeds out of there, pull all the weeds out. And Jesus said, no, don't do that now. Because when you're pulling all the weeds out, you may get some good grain. And you may get some good stuff. Leave that later on. The angels will come down. The angels will take care of it. They will separate the sheep from the goats. Okay? You don't worry about it. All right? This is an interesting thing. One more comment. Interesting thing. During the Reformation, there was some people, there were some Protestants, some Lutherans, who got a little impatient with churches that were not coming along with Reformation practices right away. So allowing their priests to marry, for example, going to both bread and wine in communion service, some of the other things. They were lagging back. They were, this is a little scary for people, whatever. And there were others that had some people express some pretty wacky theological ideas and weren't getting rid of them right away. Okay, they were, well, George, he's that way. He's got some funny thinking. So there were leaders that said, if you don't practice church discipline, if you don't have a steady stream of excommunications coming out of your church, you're throwing people out left and right who aren't doing everything just right, then you are not correct. You are a bad church. Okay, you're not a true Christian church. And Luther and his other Orthodox followers and leaders, they came out and said, no, that's not true. You cannot say that a church that does not practice church discipline is an untrue church. Now, you should practice church discipline. Yes, you should. But some just don't have it in them to do that. That's just not their thing. They don't like doing it. So you can't use that as a litmus test for whether a church is correct or not, church is a true church or not. Okay, you can't use that. But I think that's a good point. That's a very good point. Okay? Excommunications, for the most part, don't work. It's not as though they're not biblical. They are biblical, but they don't work. And the reason they don't work is real simple. In the old days, they worked because if you were cut out of thrown out of the church, everybody knew it, and nobody had anything to do with you. Today, if you're thrown out of the church, people applaud. Good for you. You told them off. Good for you. They threw you out. Big deal. Okay. In the old days, you got excommunicated. You couldn't go anywhere else. There's a story told of the church where I was in Broadhead, 125-year-old church. And somebody was excommunicated from it and literally tried to go to every other church in town and was told by the pastors of those churches, no, we can't accept you. You've been excommunicated by the Lutherans. Methodists ain't going to take you. The Presbyterians ain't going to take you. The other branch of Lutherans ain't going to take you. The Romans ain't going to take you. They're not going to take you. Okay? Now, that's not true anymore. That's not true anymore at all. Matter of fact, you can be excommunicated by one Wisconsin Synod church and be accepted by another one. I've seen that happen numerous times over the years. It used to be that couldn't be done. Once you were out, you were out. So it has no sticking power anymore. So that's why it doesn't get used. All right, we'll pick it up at 4th arrow there. And verse 7 of chapter 11. Questions? All right, let's close. May the grace of our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, the love of God the Father, and the fellowship